Hey everyone, welcome back to another cozy Christmas story. Before we begin, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below because I absolutely love knowing where all of you wonderful viewers are joining me from. It makes this feel like we're all gathered around a warm fire together, sharing stories no matter how far apart we are. Now, grab your favorite blanket, maybe a cup of hot cocoa or tea, and settle in because tonight's story is going to take us on a journey through snowy streets, unexpected reunions, and the kind of love that never really goes away. This is a story about second chances, about how fate has a funny way of bringing people back together when they need each other most, and about how sometimes the sweetest moments in life come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. So let's begin. The snow had started falling just after noon, those big fat flakes that drifted down like feathers from a torn pillow in the sky. By 3 o'clock, the entire town of Evergreen Hills was covered in a blanket of pristine white, the kind of snow that made everything look like a Christmas card come to life. Streetlights were already flickering on, casting golden halos in the gathering dusk, and from every window, warm light spilled out onto the sidewalks like liquid amber. Emma Harrison stood on the front porch of her childhood home, looking out at the neighborhood she'd grown up in. 28 years old now, she'd been back in Evergreen Hills for exactly 3 months, having returned after her life in the city had fallen apart in spectacular fashion. A failed engagement to Marcus, a corporate lawyer who'd been more interested in her as an accessory to his carefully curated life than as a partner. A job that had burned her out until she was nothing but ash, where she'd spent countless nights at the office, missing sunrises and sunsets, watching her life slip by through the windows of a high-rise building. And a tiny apartment that had cost more than it was worth, where the walls were so thin she could hear every argument, every slammed door, every reminder that she was alone in a city of millions. She'd come home to heal, to figure out who she was again beneath all the layers of corporate expectations and failed dreams. Her mother had welcomed her with open arms, with homemade soup and fresh bread, with the kind of unconditional love that only a mother can provide. Patricia hadn't asked questions, hadn't demanded explanations. She'd simply opened the door, hugged Emma tight, and said, "Welcome home, sweetheart. Stay as long as you need." Of course, being Patricia Harrison, she'd also immediately put Emma to work helping with the annual Christmas cookie drive. "Idle hands make for troubled hearts," she'd said with that knowing smile of hers. And maybe she was right. The past 3 months of helping her mother at the inn, of reconnecting with old friends, of walking the familiar streets of her childhood, it had begun to knit together the broken pieces inside her. The Cookie Brigade, as it was affectionately known, was a tradition in Evergreen Hills that went back 40 years. Every December, volunteers would bake hundreds of cookies and deliver them door to door throughout the neighborhood, spreading Christmas cheer and making sure that everyone, especially those who lived alone, felt connected to the community during the holidays. Emma's mother, Patricia, had been organizing it for the past 15 years, and this year, with Emma back home, she'd enlisted her daughter as one of the primary delivery people. Emma looked down at the red wagon beside her, piled high with tin containers full of sugar cookies, gingerbread men, chocolate crinkles, and snickerdoodles. Each tin was tied with a red and green ribbon, and attached to each was a small card that read, "Merry Christmas from your neighbors at Evergreen Hills." She'd been assigned the north side of Maple Street, a route that would take her past about 20 houses, most of which she remembered from her childhood. She pulled her red wool coat tighter around herself, adjusted her cream-colored knit hat, and grabbed the wagon's handle. The wheels crunched through the snow as she started down the front walk, her breath making small clouds in the cold air. The neighborhood was quiet in that particular way that only happens when snow is falling, as if the world itself is holding its breath, watching the beauty unfold. The first few houses went smoothly. Mrs. Chen answered the door with exclamations of delight, her round face breaking into a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She was wearing a bright red apron dusted with flour, and the scent of her famous scallion pancakes wafted out from behind her. She insisted Emma come in for tea, pressing the invitation with warm hands on Emma's arms, and Emma had to politely decline 3 times, promising to visit properly after Christmas, maybe bring her mother along. "You look so thin," Mrs. Chen had exclaimed, shaking her head. "That's city. It didn't feed you properly. Come next week, I'll make you a proper meal." The Robinsons weren't home, so she left their tin on the front porch with a note, tucking it carefully under the overhang to protect it from the snow. She remembered babysitting their kids years ago, They must be in high school now, she realized with a start. Time had moved on here, just as it had everywhere else. Old Mr. Hawthorne opened his door just a crack, peered out suspiciously with his one good eye, then broke into a wide smile when he recognized her. His weathered face, mapped with wrinkles that told stories of 8 decades of life, softened completely. "Emma Harrison, heard you were back in town. Your mama must be over the moon." He accepted his cookies with gnarled hands that trembled slightly, and Emma noticed how much frailer he seemed than the last time she'd seen him. "You were always such a good girl," he said softly. "Glad you came home where you belong." Those words echoed in her mind as she made her way to the next house. Where you belong? Did she belong here? She'd spent 7 years convincing herself that she belonged in the city, in boardrooms and networking events, in a life that looked impressive on paper but felt hollow in practice. And now she was back in Evergreen Hills, delivering cookies door to door like she was 16 again. And somehow it felt more right than anything she'd done in years. The afternoon light was fading faster now, and Emma found herself hurrying a bit as she moved down the street. She had maybe 6 houses left on her list, and the snow was falling harder, beginning to accumulate on her shoulders and in her eyelashes. She stopped in front of a large Victorian house painted a soft gray with white trim. She'd delivered cookies here last week, or at least she'd thought she had. She checked her list, squinting in the dim light. The address looked right. She pulled a tin from the wagon and made her way up the front walk, which someone had recently shoveled, though fresh snow was already covering it again. The porch was wide and welcoming, with a swing on one side and several potted evergreens decorated with white lights on the other. She climbed the steps and knocked on the front door, then waited, shifting her weight from foot to keep warm. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. She tried the doorbell and heard it chime somewhere deep inside the house. But after a full minute of waiting, no one came. Emma bit her lip, thinking. She could just leave the tin on the porch like she'd done at the Robinsons. But something about this house made her hesitate. The lights were on inside. She could see them glowing through the curtains. Maybe whoever lived here was elderly or couldn't hear well. Maybe they needed help. Before she could overthink it, she tried the doorknob. It turned easily in her hand, and the door swung open with a soft creak. Warmth rushed out to meet her, along with the scent of pine and something else. Something that triggered a memory she couldn't quite place. Wood smoke, maybe, and coffee. "Hello," she called out, stepping just inside the doorway, her boots leaving small wet marks on the hardwood floor. "Cookie delivery from the Evergreen Hills Christmas Brigade. I knocked, but I don't think you heard me. I'm just gonna leave these right here by the door." The foyer was beautiful, all dark wood and cream-colored walls that seemed to glow in the soft light. There was a staircase curving up to the second floor, its banister polished to a warm sheen. To her right was what looked like a living room, and she could see the orange flicker of firelight dancing on the walls. To her left was a hallway leading toward what she assumed was the kitchen, the floors covered in a runner rug in shades of burgundy and gold. A fire crackled somewhere nearby, the sound so familiar and comforting that it made her chest ache. She set the tin down on a small table just inside the door, a beautiful piece made of cherry wood with delicate curved legs, and was about to leave when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy footsteps. A man's footsteps. Quick, taking the stairs 2 at a time from the sound of it. "Mom, I told you I'd call you back after I—" Emma looked up, and the world stopped. Time itself seemed to freeze, crystallizing this moment into something eternal. The air left her lungs in a rush, and for a second she thought she might actually faint. The man descending the stairs was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that was slightly longer than she remembered, curling a bit at his collar in a way that made her fingers itch to touch it. He wore jeans that fit him perfectly, and a thick navy sweater that brought out the depth of his eyes. But it was his face that made Emma's heart slam against her ribs like it was trying to break free. The sharp jaw that she'd traced with her fingertips 1,000 times. The dark eyes that had always seen right through her, past all her defenses and pretenses. The small scar above his left eyebrow from where he'd fallen off his bike when they were 14. The way one eyebrow was slightly higher than the other when he was surprised, exactly like it was right now. Nathan Cross. He froze mid-step, the phone slipping from his ear as he stared at her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Neither of them breathed. The only sound was the crackling of the fire in the next room and the soft ticking of a grandfather clock somewhere in the house. "Emma?" His voice was exactly as she remembered it, deep and warm with that slight rasp that had always made her stomach flip. "Nathan," it came out as barely a whisper. I'm delivering cookies for the Christmas brigade. I didn't know you lived here." I knocked, but no one answered, and the door was unlocked, so She was babbling now, heat flooding her cheeks despite the cold. "I'm sorry. I should go." "Wait." He came down the rest of the stairs quickly, ending whatever call he'd been on without even looking at his phone. "Wait, please don't go." But she was already backing toward the door, her mind reeling. Nathan Cross. She hadn't seen him in 7 years. 7 years since that terrible night when everything had fallen apart between them. 7 years since she'd left for the city, convinced she was doing the right thing. Convinced that staying in Evergreen Hills would mean giving up on her dreams. 7 years since she'd broken both their hearts. "Emma, please." He was standing a few feet away from her now, his hands held out as if he was afraid she might bolt like a frightened deer. "It's okay. I'm glad you're here." She stopped, her hand on the doorknob, and forced herself to look at him. Really look at him. He was older, of course. There were lines at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there before, and his face had lost some of the boyish softness she remembered. But he was still Nathan. Still the boy who'd taught her how to ice skate on Morrison's Pond when they were 12. Still the teenager who'd taken her to senior prom and told her she looked like starlight. Still the man who'd asked her to stay, to build a life here with him, and she'd said no. "I didn't know you were back in town," he said softly. "When did you—" 3 months ago. Her voice was steadier now, though her heart was still racing. "I moved back in with my mom, temporarily, just until I figure things out." "And you're delivering cookies?" "Mom roped me into helping with the Christmas brigade." She managed a small smile. "You know how she is. Impossible to say no to." "I do know." He smiled back, and something in her chest twisted. "Your mom is a force of nature. She actually delivered cookies here last week. Or maybe it was your aunt. I can't remember. Either way, I have about 4 tins of cookies in my kitchen already." "Oh." Emma looked down at the tin she'd set on the table. "Then you definitely don't need more. I must have gotten my addresses mixed up. I'm sorry for barging in. I really should—" "Emma?" The way he said her name made her stop again. "Stay. Just for a few minutes. Please. I'll make coffee, or tea, or hot chocolate. Whatever you want. It's been 7 years. Can we at least talk for a few minutes?" Every instinct told her to leave. To get out of this house and away from the memories that were already flooding back, threatening to overwhelm her. But something else, something deeper, made her nod, made her let go of the doorknob and take off her snow-dusted hat. "Okay," she said quietly. "Just for a few minutes." The relief on his face was palpable. "Come on, let's go to the kitchen. It's warmer there." She followed him through the house, taking in the details as they went, her photographer's eye, something she'd developed in college but had rarely used since, cataloging everything. The living room with its stone fireplace and comfortable-looking furniture in shades of gray and cream, a chunky knit throw draped over the back of the sofa. The photographs on the walls, landscapes mostly, capturing the beauty of places she recognized. Morrison's Pond in winter, the old covered bridge on the outskirts of town, the view from Miller's Peak at sunset. Though she thought she spotted a few pictures of what might be family tucked among them. The hallway lined with bookshelves, packed with volumes that looked well-read and loved. Their spines cracked and faded in that way that only comes from being opened again and again. She caught titles as she passed. Architecture books, novels, biographies, poetry collections. One shelf was devoted entirely to books about sustainable building and green architecture, and she remembered how passionate Nathan had always been about that, how he'd talked endlessly about designing buildings that worked with nature instead of against it. It was a beautiful home, warm and inviting, the kind of place that felt lived in and cherished, where every object seemed to have been chosen with care and intention. It was so thoroughly Nathan that it made her chest ache. This was what he'd wanted to build, she realized. Not just a house, but a home, a life. And he'd done it, even without her. The kitchen was at the back of the house, a large space with white cabinets, butcher block countertops, and a large window that looked out onto what she imagined was a beautiful backyard, though it was too dark to see much now. A round table sat in a breakfast nook, set with simple place settings, and the coffee maker on the counter was still half full. "Coffee okay?" Nathan asked, already pulling down 2 mugs from a cabinet. "Perfect." She slipped out of her coat and draped it over the back of a chair, then sat down at the table, her hands folded in her lap. Nathan poured the coffee, added cream to both mugs without asking. He remembered how she took it, and brought them over. He sat down across from her, and for a moment, they just looked at each other, drinking their coffee, the silence stretching between them like a thread pulled too tight. "So," he said finally, 7 years?" "7 years," she echoed. "You look good. Really good." "So do you." It was true. He looked better than good. He looked like he'd grown into himself, become the man she'd always known he could be. "I heard you took over your dad's business, the architectural firm." 5 years ago, yeah. He retired and I bought him out. It's going well. We've expanded, actually, doing projects all over the county now. He paused, studying her face. "And you? What brought you back to Evergreen Hills?" Emma took a long sip of her coffee, gathering her thoughts. She could lie, give him some sanitized version of the truth. But this was Nathan. She'd never been able to lie to Nathan. "I had a breakdown," she said simply. "Not a dramatic one, not the kind where I ended up in a hospital or anything. But I was engaged to a man I didn't love, working 80-hour weeks at a marketing firm that saw me as nothing more than a cog in a machine, and living in an apartment where I could hear my neighbors' arguments through the walls every single night. One day, I just stopped. I called off the engagement, quit my job, and packed up everything I owned into my car. Mom told me I could come home for as long as I needed, so here I am." Nathan was quiet for a moment, processing this. "I'm sorry you went through that," he said finally, "but I'm glad you're okay. And I'm glad you came home." "Are you?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "I wouldn't blame you if you weren't. After what I did, after how I left." He looked down at his coffee, his jaw tightening. "You mean when you chose your career over me? When you said Evergreen Hills wasn't enough for you? When you said I wasn't enough for you?" "I never said you weren't enough." Her voice cracked. "I never said that, Nathan." "You didn't have to say it. You left. That said everything." The old hurt was right there, raw and fresh, despite the 7 years that had passed. Emma felt tears prickling at the backs of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I was 21 years old. I had a job offer in the city, a chance to do something I dreamed about. You asked me to turn it down, to stay here and build a life with you, and I couldn't. I felt like if I stayed, I'd always wonder what could have been." "And did you?" He looked up at her now, his dark eyes intense. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "No." The word hung in the air between them. "No, I didn't. I spent 7 years chasing something I thought would make me happy, and all I did was make myself miserable. I lost myself in that city, Nathan. I became someone I didn't recognize, someone I didn't even like. I'm sorry." His voice was softer now, the anger fading. "I didn't want that for you. Even after you left, even when I was angry and hurt, I never wanted you to be unhappy." "I know." She wiped at her eyes, frustrated with herself for getting emotional. "I know you didn't." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the wind picking up outside and the occasional creak of the old house settling. Emma looked around the kitchen again, noticing details she'd missed before. A drawing pinned to the refrigerator with a magnet, signed "Love Sophie" in a child's handwriting. A woman's cardigan draped over the back of one of the chairs. A framed photograph on the counter showing Nathan with his arm around a pretty blonde woman, both of them smiling at the camera. Her heart sank. Of course he'd moved on. Of course he had. 7 years was a long time. He'd probably been married for years, probably had kids. That drawing on the fridge was evidence enough. She'd been foolish to think that walking back into his life would mean anything, that he'd still be the Nathan she remembered, still single, still... "That's my sister," Nathan said, noticing where she was looking. Sarah. She and her husband live in Portland, but they visit a lot. That's her daughter's drawing. Sophie. She's 6. Oh. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by guilt for feeling relieved. What right did she have to feel anything about Nathan's personal life? I'm not married, he continued, as if reading her mind. I was engaged about 3 years ago, but it didn't work out. She wanted to move to Seattle for her job, and I couldn't leave Evergreen Hills. Ironic, isn't it? Nathan, it's okay. He gave her a wry smile. I made my peace with it. And honestly, I think we both knew it wasn't right. She was great, but she wasn't. He trailed off, not finishing the sentence, but Emma knew what he'd been about to say. She wasn't you. The air in the kitchen felt charged now, heavy with everything they weren't saying. Emma took another sip of her coffee, which had gone lukewarm, and tried to think of something, anything, to say that would ease the tension. This is a beautiful house, she said finally. How long have you lived here? About 4 years. I renovated it myself. Well, with help from the crew at the firm. It was a disaster when I bought it. The previous owners had let it go to hell. But I saw the potential. Spent 2 years fixing it up. It's finally starting to feel like home. You always did have an eye for that. Even in high school, you'd walk by some rundown building and talk about what it could be, what it should be. And you always listened, even when I'm sure it was boring as hell. It was never boring. The words came out softer than she intended. I loved listening to you talk about your dreams. You made me see the world differently. Made me see possibilities where other people just saw problems. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Something between hope and fear. Longing and hesitation. Emma, A phone rang, cutting him off. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and sighed. I'm sorry. I have to take this. It's a client. We're in the middle of a big project, and he's been calling nonstop all day. It's fine. I should probably get going anyway. I still have a few more houses on my route, and the snow's getting worse. Wait, just give me 5 minutes, okay? Don't leave yet. She nodded, and he stepped out of the kitchen, his voice already shifting into professional mode as he answered the call. Emma stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the snow-covered backyard. She could just make out the shapes of trees at the back of the property, their branches heavy with snow, and what looked like a small shed or workshop tucked into one corner. What was she doing here? She should have left the moment she realized it was Nathan's house, should have backed out the door and never looked back. Being here, talking to him, sitting in his kitchen like they were old friends catching up, it was opening up wounds she'd thought had healed, making her remember things she'd tried so hard to forget. But God, it felt good to see him, to hear his voice, to be near him again, even if it hurt, even if it meant confronting all the choices she'd made and all the roads not taken. Sorry about that, Nathan said, coming back into the kitchen. Crisis averted, for now anyway. He looked at her standing by the window and seemed to make a decision. Emma, don't go yet. Stay for dinner, please. I was just about to make pasta, and there's more than enough for 2. We can keep talking, or we can just be, like old times. What do you say? She should say no. She should thank him politely and leave and never come back. She should protect herself from the inevitable hurt that would come from spending more time with him, from remembering what they'd had and what she'd thrown away. But instead, she heard herself say, "Okay, I'd like that." The smile that spread across his face was worth every bit of the risk. Nathan proved to be just as good a cook as Emma remembered, maybe better. He moved around the kitchen with easy confidence, pulling out ingredients and tools with the kind of practiced efficiency that comes from doing something often and well. His hands were sure and steady as he minced garlic, the knife moving with rhythmic precision. She watched him work, fascinated by the focused expression on his face, the way his tongue peeked out slightly between his lips when he was concentrating. He put her to work chopping vegetables for a salad while he started the sauce, a rich, aromatic mixture that filled the kitchen with the scent of tomatoes, basil, garlic, and something else she couldn't quite identify. White wine, maybe, and a hint of red pepper for heat. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side at the counter, their shoulders occasionally brushing, sending little electric shocks through her system every time they touched. It was familiar and strange all at once, like muscle memory awakening after years of dormancy. "You've gotten better at this," Emma observed, slicing a cucumber with perhaps more focus than it required. "I remember when you tried to make me dinner in college and nearly set your apartment on fire." Nathan laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "That was one time, and in my defense, I didn't know you were supposed to actually watch the pan when you're cooking. I thought the timer would be enough. You left a dish towel on the burner, Nathan. There were flames. Minor flames, barely worth mentioning, and I've taken cooking classes since then, so I'm practically a professional now." He stirred the sauce, adjusting the heat with a practiced twist of the dial. "Besides, I got tired of eating frozen dinners and takeout. A man can only eat so much Chinese food before he starts to crave something homemade." "Your mom didn't keep feeding you?" "She tried, but I'm 30 years old. At some point, I had to learn to feed myself." He added a pinch of something to the sauce, dried oregano, she thought, and tasted it, making a small satisfied sound. "Plus, cooking is kind of meditative. It helps me think. After a long day at the office, coming home and making something with my hands, something that's not a blueprint or a structural plan, it centers me." Emma understood that more than she could say. She'd lost that feeling in the city, that sense of creating something tangible and real. Everything had been digital, ephemeral, campaigns that existed only in ones and zeros, success measured in metrics and analytics, rather than in anything you could touch or taste or feel. They talked about inconsequential things at first. The changes in Evergreen Hills since she'd been gone, the new coffee shop on Main Street that everyone loved, the old movie theater that had been converted into a bookstore, his sister's kids and their various antics, her mother's endless energy and her new obsession with quilting. Safe topics, easy topics. But as they sat down to eat, the pasta steaming on their plates and a bottle of red wine opened between them, the conversation began to shift. Deeper, more honest. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said, twirling pasta on his fork with careful precision. "Sure. Do you regret it? Leaving?" Emma considered the question, really thought about it, taking a sip of wine to buy herself time. The answer wasn't simple, couldn't be reduced to a simple yes or no. "I regret how I left," she said slowly, choosing each word with care. "I regret the fight we had that last night. I regret the things I said, that you were trying to hold me back, that you didn't understand my dreams. That wasn't fair to you. You were just being honest about what you wanted, and I punished you for it." She paused, pushing pasta around her plate. "I regret hurting you. I regret not being more honest with myself about what I really wanted. But do I regret taking the job? Trying to make it in the city? No. I think I needed to do that. I needed to try. Even if it didn't work out the way I hoped, at least now I know. I don't have to spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I don't have to resent this town or you or anyone else for opportunities I never took." "That's fair." He took a sip of his wine, his eyes never leaving hers. "I spent a long time being angry at you, at myself, for not being enough to make you stay, at the universe for putting us together, and then tearing us apart just when I thought we were building something real. But eventually, I realized that we were both just trying to be true to ourselves. You needed to go. I needed to stay. Neither of us was wrong. We just wanted different things. Or at least, we thought we did." "What do you mean?" Nathan set down his fork, his expression thoughtful. "I mean that maybe we didn't want different things at all. Maybe we just didn't know how to communicate what we really needed. You wanted to pursue your career, to prove to yourself that you could make it in the big city. And I wanted... God, Emma, I just wanted you. I would have gone with you if you'd asked. I would have figured out a way to make it work. But you never asked. You just assumed that staying meant giving up everything, and leaving meant leaving me behind, like there was no middle ground, no way to have both. You never said you'd go with me." Her voice was barely above a whisper now. "You never gave me the chance. You made your decision and presented it as fait accompli. I'm taking the job in the city. We should break up. It's better this way. You didn't ask what I thought. You didn't ask what I wanted. You just decided." There was no accusation in his voice, just a quiet sadness. like he'd examined this wound so many times that it had lost its sharp edges. Emma felt tears pricking at her eyes again. "I was scared," she admitted. "I was 21 and terrified and convinced that if I didn't take that job, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. And I thought you'd be happier here, building your life, without me holding you back or making you compromise your dreams. My dreams always included you, Emma. That was the part you never understood. My dream wasn't just staying in Evergreen Hills. It was building a life here, with you. Building a practice that did meaningful work, designing buildings that made people's lives better, and coming home every night to you. That was what I wanted. Everything else was just details." "When did you get so wise?" "Therapy." He grinned. 2 years of it after Sarah left. Best thing I ever did for myself. But they laughed, and something loosened in Emma's chest. This was okay. They were okay. Maybe not the way they used to be. Maybe they could never be that again. But they could be something. Friends, at least. Maybe that was enough. "What are you going to do?" Nathan asked, his eyes searching her face. "Now that you're back, are you staying in Evergreen Hills? Or is this just temporary? A pit stop while you figure out your next move?" "I don't know," Emma admitted, the honesty feeling both liberating and terrifying. "I've been helping Mom with the inn. Did you know she bought the old Riverside Inn last year and renovated it? It's beautiful now. She kept all the original architectural details, the crown molding and the original hardwood floors, but updated everything else. New bathrooms, modern kitchen, but still with that historic charm. I've been managing the bookings and the social media, building her online presence, and I actually really love it. It feels meaningful, you know? Helping my mom build something she's passionate about, helping guests discover this town we love. But I don't know if it's sustainable long term. The inn is doing well, but I don't know if it can support both of us financially. I don't know if I can afford to stay even if I want to. What if you didn't work for your mom? What if you did something else?" "Like what?" He leaned back in his chair, studying her with that intense focus that had always made her feel like she was the only person in the world. "You were always good at marketing, even back in high school. You organized that fundraiser for the animal shelter that brought in $10,000, a record that still stands, by the way. You created that whole campaign for the drama club that sold out every show for the entire season. You have a gift for understanding what people want and how to communicate with them. What if you started your own business? Marketing, consulting for small businesses in town. God knows there are plenty of places around here that could use the help. The old guard is still running things the way they did 30 years ago, and the younger generation doesn't always know where to start." Emma felt a spark of excitement ignite in her chest, small but growing. I never thought about that. Think about it now." He was warming to the idea. She could see it in his eyes, the way they lit up when he was passionate about something. You could work from home, set your own hours, choose your own clients. No more 80-hour weeks unless you choose to work them. No more answering to bosses who don't value you, and you'd be helping the community, making a difference. Isn't that what you always wanted? To do work that mattered? The idea took root in her mind, sending out tentative shoots. Her own business, working for herself, using her skills to help the town she loved, the community that had shaped her, staying in Evergreen Hills, but on her own terms. Not running away from her dreams, but redefining what those dreams looked like. "That's actually not a bad idea," she said slowly, her mind already spinning with possibilities. "I could start small, build a client base, maybe rent a small office space downtown eventually, but start from home to keep costs low. I have some savings left. Not a lot, but enough to get started if I'm careful. It's a great idea, and I happen to know several business owners who would hire you in a heartbeat, starting with me. You? The firm could use help with our marketing. We've been meaning to overhaul our website and social media presence for years, but we never have the time or expertise. We're architects, not marketers. You could consult with us, help us figure out how to reach more clients, how to showcase our work better. We've done some amazing projects in the past few years, but nobody knows about them because we're terrible at promoting ourselves. I'd pay you well, very well. This would be a substantial contract, Emma." "Nathan, I can't take your money just because we have history. You wouldn't be taking anything. You'd be earning it, and it would be a legitimate business expense completely above board. I'm not offering out of pity or old feelings or anything like that. I'm offering because you're good at what you do and I need the help. That's it. This is a business decision that makes sense for both of us. Emma looked at him, trying to gauge if he was serious. He met her gaze steadily, and she saw nothing but sincerity there. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. The offer stands, whether it's next week or next year. They finished dinner, and Emma helped him clean up, falling back into that easy rhythm. By the time they were done, it was after 8, and when Emma looked out the window, she gasped. The snow was coming down in thick sheets now, and the world outside was a wall of white. "Oh no," she breathed. "I need to get home. Mom's going to worry." Nathan was already pulling out his phone. "Let me check the weather." He frowned at the screen. "They're saying it's going to get worse before it gets better. Travel advisory in effect. They're asking people to stay off the roads unless it's an emergency. I have to try? I can't just stay here? Emma, look at it." He gestured to the window. "You'll never make it home in this. Your wagon is probably buried already, and even if you could walk, it's dangerous. You could get lost, or worse. Then what am I supposed to do?" He hesitated, then said carefully, "You could stay here. I have a guest room. You'd be warm and safe, and in the morning, when the plows have been through, you can go home. I'll even drive you if the streets are bad." Emma's first instinct was to say no, to insist she could make it, that she'd be fine. But even as she opened her mouth, she knew he was right. The snow was too heavy, the wind too strong. It would be stupid to try to walk home in this, even if it was only a few blocks. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. I'm offering. And honestly, I'm not ready for you to leave yet. We just started catching up. It would be nice to have more time. As friends," he added quickly. "No pressure, no expectations, just time. Friends. Right. They could do that." "Okay," she said. "Thank you. I'll call my mom and let her know where I am." Patricia was predictably worried but relieved to hear Emma was safe. She made Emma promise to stay put no matter what and to call again in the morning. After Emma hung up, Nathan showed her to the guest room upstairs, a cozy space with a double bed covered in a blue and white quilt, a dresser, and a large window that looked out over the front yard. "There are extra toiletries in the bathroom across the hall," he said, "and I'll find you something to sleep in. You're about Sarah's size, and she leaves clothes here all the time." "Thank you. Really. You're being so kind." "Emma." He turned to face her, and in the dim light of the hallway, his face was all shadows and angles. "After everything, you think I wouldn't help you? You think I'd let you walk home in a blizzard? I don't know. I wasn't sure if you'd even want to see me again. There was never a world where I wouldn't want to see you again. Even when I was angry, even when I thought I hated you, I still wanted to see you. You're Emma. You'll always be Emma to me." The way he said it made her throat tight. She managed a nod, not trusting herself to speak, and he gave her a soft smile before disappearing down the hall. He returned a few minutes later with a pair of flannel pajama pants and a soft t-shirt, which she accepted gratefully. Alone in the guest room, Emma changed into the borrowed clothes and sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. She was in Nathan's house, in Nathan's guest room, wearing his sister's pajamas. The whole situation felt surreal, like a dream she might wake up from at any moment. She walked over to the window and looked out at the snow, which showed no signs of stopping. The streetlights were barely visible through the white curtain of falling snow, and the houses across the street were nothing more than dim shapes. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. A soft knock on the door made her turn. "Come in," she called. Nathan poked his head in, now wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt himself. "I was going to make some hot chocolate and watch a Christmas movie. Want to join me? Or if you're tired, that's totally fine too." She should say she was tired. Should stay in this room and put as much distance between them as possible. But she found herself saying, "Hot chocolate sounds perfect." They ended up in the living room, curled up on opposite ends of the large sectional sofa, mugs of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream and a dusting of cinnamon in their hands, and It's a Wonderful Life playing on the TV. The fire crackled in the fireplace, sending dancing shadows across the walls and the Christmas tree in the corner. Emma hadn't noticed it before, but now she saw it was at least 7 feet tall, decorated simply with white lights and what looked like handmade ornaments, twinkled with gentle light. The room was warm and cozy, insulated from the storm raging outside, and Emma felt something inside her begin to unwind, to relax in a way she hadn't in months. As the movie played, Emma found herself relaxing despite her nerves, sinking deeper into the couch cushions, her muscles releasing tension she hadn't even realized she was carrying. She'd seen this movie 100 times, could probably recite half the dialogue from memory, but it never got old. The story of George Bailey, a man who thought he'd failed, only to discover how much his life had mattered, how many people he'd touched, how one person's kindness could ripple out and change the world. It hit differently now, after her own journey of feeling lost and slowly finding her way back to herself. "I love this movie," Nathan said softly during a quiet moment, and Emma could hear the emotion thick in his voice. "It always makes me cry, every single time, without fail." "Me too." Emma glanced over at him, seeing his eyes already glistening in the flickering light from the TV. "Remember when we watched this together in college? That Christmas when we were both home on break? We made a fort out of blankets in your mom's living room and ate our weight in popcorn." A smile tugged at his lips, soft and reminiscent. "Your mom kept coming in to check on us, and we kept reassuring her we were fine, and she'd just smile in that way of hers like she knew something we didn't. And you cried at the end, and you tried to pretend you had something in your eye." "I had something in my eye, both eyes. Emotional catharsis. Very serious medical condition." But he was grinning now, and so was she, and for a moment it felt like no time had passed at all, like they were still those kids in their early 20s, convinced they had forever stretching out ahead of them. They laughed, and Emma felt something shift between them, felt the walls she'd been so carefully maintaining begin to crumble like sandcastles against an incoming tide. The defenses she'd erected, the careful distance she'd tried to maintain, it was all falling away, and she wasn't sure she had the strength or the desire to build them back up. "Emma," Nathan said, his voice serious now, "can I ask you something else?" "Always." "When you were in the city, engaged to that guy, did you ever think about me? About us?" She could lie. Should lie, probably. But she was so tired of lying, especially to herself. "Every day," she whispered. "Every single day. Some days it was just a passing thought. Other days it consumed me. There were nights when I'd lie awake wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed, if we'd gotten married, had kids, built a life here, and other nights when I'd convince myself I'd made the right choice, that we would have ended up resenting each other if I'd given up my dreams." "I thought about you too," he admitted. "More than I should have, probably. More than was healthy. Sarah used to get so frustrated with me because I'd compare every woman I dated to you. No one ever measured up. Nathan, I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty or to pressure you into anything. I'm just being honest. You asked earlier if I was glad you came home, and the answer is yes. Yes, I'm glad. Because even though we're not together, even though we might never be together again, at least I get to see you, talk to you, know that you're okay. That's something." Emma felt tears streaming down her face now, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry for hurting you, for leaving, for not being brave enough to fight for us." He was beside her in an instant, setting his mug down and pulling her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest and cried, really cried, for the first time in months, for everything she'd lost, for the years they'd spent apart, for the pain they'd both endured, for the what-ifs and the might-have-beens. Nathan held her through it all, one hand stroking her hair, the other rubbing circles on her back, murmuring soft words of comfort that she couldn't quite make out, but that soothed her nonetheless. When the tears finally subsided, she pulled back, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping at her face. "I didn't mean to fall apart on you. Don't apologize. You needed that. We both needed that, I think." She looked up at him, really looked at him, and saw that his own eyes were red-rimmed, that his face was tight with emotion he was trying to control. On impulse, she reached up and touched his cheek, and he leaned into her hand, closing his eyes. "Emma," he breathed, I don't want to push you. I don't want to rush anything. But I need you to know. If there's even a chance, even the smallest possibility that we could try again, I want to take it. I know we're different people now. I know we can't just pick up where we left off. But we could start fresh. Take it slow. See where it goes. What do you think? Her heart was pounding so hard, she was sure he could hear it. This was the moment. The choice. She could say no, could protect herself from potential future hurt, could stick to the plan of just being friends, or she could take the leap, could trust in the love they'd once shared and the connection they clearly still felt, could believe that maybe, just maybe, fate had brought her to his door for a reason. I think, she said slowly, that I've spent 7 years running away from what I really wanted, and I don't want to run anymore. So yes, let's try. Let's take it slow and see where it goes. The smile that spread across his face was like the sun breaking through clouds. He cupped her face in his hands and leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. But she didn't want to. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it was like coming home. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them relearning the feel of each other. But then it deepened, 7 years of longing and loss pouring into it, and Emma felt like she might float away if Nathan wasn't holding her so tightly. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, smiling like idiots. "I missed you so much," Nathan whispered. "I missed you too, so much." They stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other, and then Nathan pulled back enough to look at her properly. "So, where do we go from here?" "Well," Emma said, feeling lighter than she had in years, "I guess we start with that marketing consultation you mentioned, then maybe a proper date, and we just see what happens. No pressure, no rushing, just us figuring it out together." "I like that plan." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Though I have to say, if all my business consultations end with me kissing the consultant, I'm going to have a lot of explaining to do to HR." Emma laughed, actually laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. "You don't have an HR department. You're the boss." "Excellent point. Then I can kiss the consultant as much as I want." "Is that so?" "Absolutely." He demonstrated his point thoroughly. They spent the rest of the evening on the couch, the movie forgotten, just talking and laughing and stealing kisses. At some point, Emma ended up curled against Nathan's side, his arm around her shoulders, and that's where she fell asleep, warm and safe and happier than she'd been in years. When she woke up, it was morning, and she was in the guest bed, the quilt pulled up over her with care. Nathan must have carried her upstairs at some point after she'd fallen asleep on the couch. The thought made her smile, warmth spreading through her chest. She could picture it, him gently extracting himself from where they'd ended up tangled together, carefully lifting her in his arms, carrying her up the stairs like she weighed nothing, tucking her into bed with the same gentleness he'd always shown her. She got up and looked out the window, gasping at what she saw, her breath fogging the cold glass. The snow had stopped, and the world outside was transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Everything was covered in what had to be at least 2 feet of pristine white snow, glittering in the morning sun like someone had scattered diamonds across the entire town, each flake catching the light and throwing it back in tiny rainbows. The trees looked like they'd been dipped in sugar and left to dry, their branches heavy with snow that caught the light and sparkled. Icicles hung from every roofline, long and elegant, catching the light and throwing little rainbows across the snow below. The world looked clean and new and impossibly beautiful, like a Christmas card come to life, or like a snow globe that someone had just shaken and set down to settle. She made her way downstairs, following the scent of coffee and bacon and something sweet, pancakes maybe, that made her stomach growl with sudden hunger. Nathan was in the kitchen, standing at the stove with a spatula in hand. And when he heard her, he turned and smiled. That smile. God, that smile. It hit her like a physical force, warming her from the inside out, chasing away the last lingering chill from sleep. "Good morning," he said, and his voice was rough with sleep, deeper than usual, in a way that made her stomach flip. His hair was tousled, sticking up in the back, and he was wearing flannel pajama pants and a t-shirt that hugged his chest in a way that made it hard for her to look away. How'd you sleep?" "Better than I have in months." She walked over and slipped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her cheek against his back, breathing in the scent of him. Coffee and soap and something uniquely Nathan. She felt him tense for just a moment, then relax into her embrace, one hand coming down to cover hers where they rested against his stomach. "Thank you for bringing me up to bed, and for not waking me to walk me upstairs. I must have been dead to the world." "You were dead to the world," started snoring about halfway through the movie. But his voice was teasing, affectionate, and she could hear the smile in it. "I do not snore." Okay, not snoring, just breathing very enthusiastically. He turned in her arms and kissed her softly, and Emma melted into it, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. Hungry? Starving. He'd made a feast. Fluffy pancakes with maple syrup, crispy bacon, scrambled eggs with cheese, fresh fruit, and coffee so good it made her want to weep. They ate breakfast together at the kitchen table, the morning sun streaming through the windows and painting everything gold, and Emma called her mother to let her know she was fine and would be home soon. Patricia's knowing tone made Emma blush, a flush creeping up her neck, and she could practically hear her mother's smile through the phone, could imagine her in the kitchen of the inn, that little knowing look on her face. After breakfast, true to his word, Nathan drove her home. The streets had been plowed, but there were still mountains of snow everywhere, and the whole town had that hushed, magical quality that comes after a big storm. When they pulled up in front of her mother's house, Emma found herself reluctant to get out of the car. "So," Nathan said, "dinner tomorrow night? Like a proper date?" "I'd love that. And we'll schedule that marketing consultation for next week?" "Absolutely." He leaned across the console and kissed her, and Emma melted into it, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. When they broke apart, both of them were grinning. "I'll call you later," he promised. "You better." Emma got out of the car and retrieved her wagon, which Nathan had dug out from the snow this morning. She watched him drive away, then turned to face the house. Her mother was already standing in the doorway, smiling like the cat who got the cream. "Don't say it," Emma warned as she climbed the porch steps. "I'm not saying anything. I'm just thinking how funny it is that you delivered cookies to literally everyone on your route except Nathan, and yet you ended up at his house anyway. Fate works in mysterious ways." Emma laughed and hugged her mother. "You're impossible, you know that?" "I know. Now come inside and tell me everything." As Emma followed her mother into the house, she couldn't help but look back one more time at the street covered in snow, at the tire tracks leading away from the house, at the whole beautiful town stretched out before her. She was home, really home. And for the first time in 7 years, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The rest of December passed in a blur of happiness that Emma sometimes had to pinch herself to believe was real. Emma and Nathan took it slow, just as they'd promised, going on proper dates that felt both brand new and comfortably familiar, spending time together, relearning each other in all the small ways that mattered. Their first official date was at Angelo's, the Italian restaurant on Main Street that had been there forever, where they sat in a corner booth and talked for 4 hours straight until the staff was cleaning up around them and giving them pointed looks. Nathan told her about the projects he was most proud of. The community center he designed that had won an award for sustainable architecture, the affordable housing development that had managed to be both beautiful and practical, the way he'd convinced the city council to preserve the old train depot instead of tearing it down, then converted it into a stunning mixed-use space that now housed shops and offices and a small museum. Emma told him about her plans for the business, the logo she'd already sketched out in her notebook, the clients she'd already started approaching. She told him about the joy she'd rediscovered in creative work, how different it felt when she was working for herself, for her community, instead of for some faceless corporation that only cared about quarterly earnings. They went ice skating at Morrison's Pond on a Sunday afternoon, just like they used to do as teenagers. Nathan still skated with the same easy grace she remembered, gliding across the ice like he'd been born with blades on his feet, while Emma wobbled and clutched his arm and laughed when she nearly fell. He caught her every time, his arms strong and sure around her waist, and they'd end up standing there in the middle of the pond, snow falling gently around them, just looking at each other like they couldn't quite believe this was real. One evening, Nathan took her to see the house he was most proud of. A modern cabin he'd designed for a couple retiring from the city, nestled in the woods at the edge of town. He showed her every detail with boyish enthusiasm, pointing out the way the windows were positioned to capture the sunrise, the passive solar heating system that kept energy costs low, the native plantings that would attract butterflies and birds. His eyes lit up as he talked, his hands moving expressively, and Emma fell in love with him all over again, watching his passion pour out. They had dinner at her mother's house one night, and Patricia was on her best behavior, only embarrassing Emma mildly with stories from her childhood. But Emma caught her mother watching them throughout the evening. A soft, satisfied smile on her face, like she'd known all along that this was how it would end. She started working on a business plan for her marketing consulting company, spending hours at Nathan's kitchen table with her laptop and notebooks spread everywhere while he worked on his own projects beside her. They worked in comfortable silence mostly, but sometimes one of them would look up and catch the other staring, and they'd grin like teenagers caught passing notes in class. The website she designed for his firm was sleek and professional, showcasing their best work with stunning photography and clean, modern design. Nathan had insisted on doing a professional photo shoot of their projects, and Emma had directed it all, her eye for composition and storytelling, creating a portfolio that made even Nathan's partners, crusty old architects who'd been skeptical about the whole thing, admit that she'd done something special. Within a week of launching it, they'd gotten 3 new inquiries from potential clients, and within 2 weeks, they'd signed 2 major contracts. Word spread quickly in Evergreen Hills that Emma Harrison was back and available for marketing help, and soon she had more clients than she could handle. The hardware store needed help with their social media. Their Facebook page hadn't been updated in 3 years. The bakery wanted to rebrand completely, modernize their look while keeping the warmth that had made them a town institution for 40 years. The local bookstore, the one that used to be the movie theater, needed a complete overhaul of their online presence, including an e-commerce site so they could compete with the big online retailers. Emma threw herself into the work, loving every minute of it, feeling like she'd finally found the thing she was meant to do, the way her skills and passions and values all aligned perfectly. On Christmas Eve, Nathan picked her up for dinner at his place. When she arrived, she found that he'd gone all out. The table was set with candles and good china, Christmas music was playing softly, and something that smelled absolutely incredible was cooking in the kitchen. "What's all this?" she asked, slipping out of her coat. "This," he said, taking her coat and hanging it up, "is me trying to impress you. Consider me impressed." Over dinner, roasted duck with all the trimmings, they talked about their plans for the new year. Emma's business was taking off faster than she'd anticipated, and she was thinking about renting a small office space downtown. Nathan's firm had just landed their biggest contract yet, a complete renovation of the old courthouse. They were both busy, both happy, both building lives they were proud of. After dinner, they moved to the living room, and Nathan handed her a small wrapped box. "I know we said no gifts, but I saw this, and I couldn't resist." Emma opened it carefully, and inside was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant in the shape of a compass. "Nathan," she breathed, "it's beautiful. Read the inscription on the back." She turned it over and read the tiny engraved words, "All roads lead home." Tears sprang to her eyes, and she looked up at him. "I love it. Nathan, I love you. I know we said we'd take it slow, and we have, but I need you to know. I love you. I never stopped loving you." "Emma." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I love you too. Always have. Always will." They spent the rest of the evening wrapped up in each other, and when midnight came and Christmas officially arrived, they stood by the window and watched the snow begin to fall again, gentle and soft like a blessing. "You know what's funny?" Emma said, leaning back against Nathan's chest, his arms wrapped around her waist. "I spent all those years searching for something, and it was here all along. You were here all along." "I wasn't going anywhere," he murmured into her hair. "I was always here waiting for you to come home." And as Emma stood there, safe in Nathan's arms, watching the snow fall on Christmas Eve in the town where she'd grown up, where she'd fallen in love, where she'd built a life she was proud of, she realized something important. Home wasn't just a place. It wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. Home was wherever the people you loved were. Home was the place where you could be yourself, completely and without reservation. Home was here, in Nathan's arms, in this moment, on this perfect Christmas Eve. She'd delivered cookies door to door and accidentally entered the home of the man she'd loved years ago. But in doing so, she'd found her way back to herself, back to her dreams, redefined and reshaped into something even better than she'd imagined. Back to the love she'd never really lost, just misplaced for a while. "Merry Christmas, Nathan," she whispered. "Merry Christmas, Emma. Welcome home." And somewhere outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing evergreen hills in magic, in possibility, in the promise of new beginnings and second chances, and love that never really dies. It just waits patiently for you to find your way back to it. I hope you loved this story as much as I loved sharing it with you. Remember, sometimes the best gifts in life come wrapped in the most unexpected packages, and sometimes all it takes is a wrong door and a tin of cookies to change everything. If this story touched your heart, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment telling me what you thought, and subscribe if you want more cozy Christmas romance stories all year long. And don't forget to tell me where you're watching from. I love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay cozy, stay warm, and remember that it's never too late to come home.